May I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, member of the jury. Calculated risk. On July 14, 2018, Jordan Ryder and Parker Page went hiking at Calkins Campground. While out there, Jordan had to make a calculated risk. Keep paying for her daughter's disease, or kill her and get the insurance money. Jordan Ryder has had a tough life. She had a child at an early age and soon after became a single parent. Her daughter, Parker Page, became her first priority. She made sure that Parker had everything she needed. But times were getting tough, and money was getting tight. So Jordan starts selling drugs online for some extra money. And in 2012, Jordan gets sent to jail, and Parker gets left in the care of her aunt. Now the next year, Jordan receives a letter from her sister saying that Parker has been diagnosed with brittle bones disease. As far as Jordan understands it, Parker's a little more fragile than other kids, but she would be fine. So Jordan just sends her letters, encouraging her to be strong. But then Jordan gets out of jail, and Jordan gets to see her disease firsthand. And she realizes just how costly her disease could be. Jordan decides that Parker has to get over that disease. She couldn't risk having to pay for a huge medical bill. So she makes it her mission to get Parker to get over her disease. And on July 14, 2018, she takes Parker camping at Calkins Campground to do just that. But as they approach the campground, Jordan starts to get nervous. What if Parker never gets over this disease? What would she do then? And in that moment, as they approached the campground, Jordan made a calculated risk. Out of the corner of her eye, she spots a little cafe, decides to pull it. She and Parker walk in, they talk with the owner a little bit, order some food, and Jordan sets her plan into motion. While they're at the cafe, Jordan decides to increase her daughter's life insurance. Now they leave the cafe, and a few hours later, they go hiking on Lacrone Loop, one of the most dangerous trails at Calkins Campground. And as they're up there, Parker starts to get tired. She starts complaining of aches and pains, symptoms of her disease. And Jordan? Well, Jordan starts to get angry. So angry that she snatches her hiking stick away from her. The way Parker was acting, she didn't think she would ever get over this disease. And that made Jordan furious. All it takes is one little comment from Parker, and Jordan takes that cane, that hiking stick, and she uses it to shove Parker Page over the edge of a 40-foot cliff. On July 14, 2018, Jordan Ryder took a risk, a calculated risk, that resulted in the death of her daughter, Parker Page. Now, as the prosecution in today's case, we have the burden of proof, and it's a burden that we gladly take on. And our burden is to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Jordan Ryder knowingly caused the death of her daughter by pushing her off Lacrone Loop. In order to illustrate that burden, I'd like you to imagine a puzzle. And every piece represents the evidence and testimony we will bring before you. As the prosecution, we don't have to give you every piece of the puzzle. We just have to have enough pieces so that you can see the picture. And in order to help you see the picture, we will call 3 witnesses. First, we will call Armani Rodriguez, the owner of Calkins Campground. And she will tell you just how dangerous Lacrone Loop is. Next, we will call Kelly Dews, a hiker on that day. And she will explain her interactions with Jordan and Ryder and Parker. And lastly, we will call Dr. Quincy, a medical examiner. And she will explain to you just what Parker's cause of death was. And at the end of this trial, when you step into that deliberation room, I know that you will come back with the only verdict that evidence supports and justice demands. And that is to find Jordan Ryder guilty of aggravated murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Opening for the defense, Your Honor.
Absolutely.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, may it please the court.
Okay.
There is nothing stronger than a mother's love. Today I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story about love, about loss, about life. It's a story about a mother's love for her daughter. Because on March 15th, 2006, Jordan Ryder held her newborn daughter, Parker, in her arms for the very first time. It was the happiest moment of her life. But when Parker was just 2 years old, Jordan's life became a waking nightmare. Because one day she came home to find her husband, Terry, Parker's father, on the couch. He wouldn't wake up. He never woke up. Just a few short months later, both of Jordan's parents were killed by a drunk driver. Jordan and Parker were alone. But members of the jury, she did not give up. Like so many single mothers, she struggled. She fought and she cried. But she never gave up. Even when Parker was diagnosed with brittle bone disease, a debilitating disorder that made Parker's bones as fragile as glass, Jordan did not give up. Because there is nothing stronger than a mother's love. Members of the jury, this is that mother. This is Jordan Ryder. Needless to say, this mother has been through, has lost more, has loved more than many of us ever will. And now the prosecution wants to tell you that this mother would kill her only child. Because there's one more tragic event in Jordan's life we have to talk about. Because on July 14th, 2018, her daughter Parker was taken from her. Parker, her daughter of her late husband, granddaughter of her late parents, the girl she loved more than anything, was tragically and cruelly taken far too soon. And now she stands accused of murder. Now, the defense has no burden in today's case. In fact, that burden, it starts, stays, and stops right here. Because the prosecution has the highest burden that our criminal justice system allows. They must prove to you, beyond every and any reasonable doubt you might possibly have, that this mother would kill her only child. To rule in their favor, you must be certain that this mother is guilty of murder. Members of the jury, they will fail to meet that burden. Because this mother is not guilty. Today, the defense will call 3 witnesses to help show you that fact. First, you hear from the defense's medical examiner, who will point out 2 critical flaws in the prosecution's case. First, the time of death. The prosecution will allege that Parker died between 4 and 6 p.m. But our expert will tell you that was bad math. We expect him to tell you that Parker actually died several hours later than the prosecution alleges, and how that changes everything. Second, the cause of death. The prosecution today will attempt to connect the dots to prove that this was a homicide. But we expect our expert to tell you that the dots the prosecution is connecting, they're not even on the same page. Next, you'll hear from someone who was actually at the campground on that fateful day, an experienced hiker and backpacker. We expect her to shed light on the timeline of events that day, and to show you that there is no way that Jordan Ryder committed this crime. Finally, you're going to hear from Jordan Ryder herself. Members of the jury, she's going to tell you about her love, her loss, and her life. There's 2 things we need you to listen to. Listen. When she tells you that she loved Parker more than anything. And listen. Listen. when she tells you that she did not commit this crime? Members of the jury, there's one thing I ask that you keep in mind today, just one. There is nothing stronger than a mother's love. Because at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Ms. Cotta, is going to come before you. And she'll ask you for the only verdict that the facts, the law, and justice compels. To find Jordan Ryder not guilty. Thank you.
All right. Would the state like to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state would like to call Armani Rodriguez to the stand. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Could you introduce yourself to the court?
Good afternoon. My name is Armani Rodriguez.
What do you do, Ms. Rodriguez?
Well, I'm currently the owner and the manager of Calkins Campground.
Well, what exactly is Calkins Campground?
Calkins Campground, which is where I live, is one of the best, if not the best campground in the whole of Midlands. We are especially famous for our exclusive campsites and cabins and our challenging trails.
Would you recognize a copy of your campground if I showed it to you?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Approaching opposing counsel.
So noted.
As per stipulation, there are no objections, Your Honor.
All right.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you.
Would Your Honor like a courtesy copy?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
What have I just handed you, Ms. Rodriguez?
It's a map of my campground.
Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, it is.
Has it been changed or altered in any way?
No, not that I can see.
Your Honor, at this time, move to enter Exhibit 23 into evidence.
There's no objections here.
No objections, Your Honor.
So noted.
Now, Ms. Rodriguez, could you explain what exactly is at your campground?
Yes, we do have 3 different hiking trails. We have the one over here, which is in the Crown Loop. It's our most difficult hiking trail because it has cliffs on it, and they are like protruding roots of trees, and it has a very rough terrain. And then we have the one over here, the one over where the Muskie Pond is. It's the Ziegler Path. It's the relatively easier one. That's the one children and older people go on. And then we have the one here, the Wagoner Loop. It's kind of like an intermediate because virtually anybody can go on that one. Then we have 12 campsites and 4 cabins. I live in cabin 1 and I rent out the other cabins to other people. Our campsites are relatively close to each other, so campers have access to different things. But campsite 12 is secluded, and it's advertised that way because it gives secrecy and privacy to the campers that choose it.
Now, Ms. Rodriguez, why are you here today in court?
I'm here to say what I know about this case and about Ms. Parker and her deceased daughter's relationship.
Now, how did you meet Ms. Ryder?
Ms. Ryder came into my office on the 14th of July 2017 to rent campsite 12.
Was there any problems checking Ms. Ryder in?
Well, yes, there was a minor altercation when it came to the time for her to sign the waiver.
Well, what was that altercation?
Okay, the waiver is basically like a disclaimer that says that if you come with a minor child or someone that's not over 18, you're responsible for your actions and the child's actions. When it came to the time for her to sign the waiver, Ms. Jordan seemed reluctant to provide her ID. And then I insisted that it was necessary to provide an ID. Then all of a sudden she had the ID. I found that very suspicious.
Now, was this the only time that you saw Ms. Ryder from Parker Page?
No. The second time I saw them was around noon, later that day. They were heading out to the Crown Loop.
Did you ever see them while they were on the Crown Loop?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I did see them around 4:30-ish. I was at my office signing out, renting out campsites as usual. And then I heard a scream. I was immediately startled. So I went straight to the Lecron room because it sounded like the scream of a child. And then I met Miss Parker hovering over, hovering over Parker.
Did Miss Ryder try to explain what that scream was?
Yes. She said Parker saw a fox and screamed like it was a lion.
Was that the last time that you heard that scream?
No. I heard the scream again when I was going back to the campground.
And did you ever see Parker Page after that moment?
No. Unfortunately, that was the last time I saw Parker Page.
Now, was that the last time that you saw Miss Ryder?
No. I saw Miss Ryder later around 6:30 that evening.
Do you know what she was doing?
Yes, she looked like she was setting up to start a fire. So I walked into their campsite to ask them about their experience so far. And then I asked her, because I noticed Parker wasn't there, and I asked her about Parker's whereabouts. And she said Parker was in the tent sleeping. I looked in the tent, Parker wasn't there.
And did you ever see Miss Ryder after that?
Yes, I did see her the next day, the morning of the next day.
Well, let's go through that day. Can you tell us what happened the morning of July 15th?
Yes. That morning, I woke up really early because I like to hike early in the morning before my campers go on their own hike. So I woke up in the wee hours of the morning to go on my normal hike. On my way out, I noticed Miss Ryder's truck wasn't there. So I found that really puzzling because it was too early. But then I went out, went on my hike, and then I came back. And at my office, Detective Chesney was there. That's what he introduced himself as. And he showed me a picture of Parker. I immediately recognized her. And then I took him to Miss Jordan's campsite.
What happened when you took Detective Chesney to Jordan Ryder's campsite?
They asked about Parker, and Miss Jordan did not know where Parker was. So we went out to the trails, because that was the last place I saw Parker. So we went out to the trails to look for Parker, and we found Parker beneath the cliff on the corner.
I hate to ask this, Miss Rodriguez, but when you found Parker, was she alive?
No. Parker was dead, and she had multiple bruises all over her body.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions, but I do ask to publish to the jury.
So granted. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Rodriguez.
Good afternoon.
I want to start by talking about your direct examination. In your direct examination, you described Leckrone Loop as your most dangerous trail. Is that correct?
It is our most challenging trail. It's not dangerous, but it is challenging.
It is your most challenging trail, yes?
Yes.
Yet you were the one who recommended it to Parker and Miss Ryder, yes?
I recommended it to Miss Ryder because she seemed a bit shaky and she was sweating. And Leckrone Loop is famous for its shade. So I told her, oh, you could go on Leckrone Loop. I wasn't entirely sure she would go with Parker because I thought she would read the warning sign that says small children are not allowed on the trail. I wouldn't go with Parker.
So that's a yes, Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes, I suggested it to Miss Ryder.
And you mentioned that in your direct examination that the Ziegler path is what you usually recommend for people with children.
Yes, for family, yes. But I was not sure if she was going to go with Parker or not, or if she was going to go alone. So I recommended Leckrone Loop for her.
But you saw that Parker Page was there, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you even thought to mention that Campsite 12 was secluded and you wouldn't recommend it.
Yes, I did not recommend Campsite 12 because the road to Campsite 12 is really rough and it's separate entirely from the rest of the campground. But
So that's a yes, Ms. Rodriguez, you didn't recommend Campsite 12?
No, but Ms. Jordan came.
But
Your Honor, I ask that my witness be allowed to finish her answer.
Yes, Counselor, allow the witness to complete their statements and
Yes.
move on to the next question.
Yes, Your Honor. Please continue.
Ms. Jordan came to my campground wanting to rent out campsite 12. So I had my doubts about it, but that was what she wanted, so I gave it to her.
At that time, you assumed that Parker was joining Miss Ryder for campsite 12, yes?
Yes, but I was not sure if she was going to go on the hike or not.
Now, let's move on to what happened that day. You didn't see Parker at the cliff?
I saw her on the Lecron Loop. I didn't see her particularly at the cliff.
You didn't see Jordan and Parker arrive back to the campsite after their hike, did you?
No, that was the last time I saw Parker when Jordan was hovering over her.
But let's talk about what you did see. You saw that Parker was so excited to be going on the hike, correct?
Yes, Parker did seem excited to be going on the hike before they started hiking.
You even heard her say that she was looking forward to this hike, yes?
Objection, hearsay.
Your response, Counselor?
This is an exception to hearsay pursuant to Rule 8033, as it is talking about her mental state at the time, and therefore she was only talking about her intent to go hiking. Therefore, Parker's statement is admissible under the exceptions of hearsay.
Your Honor, if I may,
You may.
that exception is if the witness is available as a witness, as Parker is unfortunately no longer with us. She's an unavailable witness, and therefore there has to be another exception to her statements.
Very good point, Counselor. Do you have any other exceptions to bring about?
It was also present sense and impression because it was at the time Parker was so excited that she uttered those words and was talking about how excited she was.
Once again, Your Honor, that's for if the witness is available.
Your Honor, according to Rule 803, these are not excluded by hearsay regardless of whether the declarant is available as a witness for both 2 and 3 of 803.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Moving on, you talked about the scream that you heard. Now, you say in your statement that this scream is pretty typical. You hear a lot of kids scream, correct?
Yes, we have animals on our trails, so it's quite normal for people to scream because they don't expect to see small animals there. But I did hear a startling scream. That's why I went out.
And when you went out there, you mentioned animals. That was the reason Jordan gave you when you went out there, and you thought that explanation was reasonable, correct?
It made sense at that time because it's normal to hear screams. That's why I didn't go back to check the second time.
When you went out there, both of them seemed fine, yes?
They did seem fine. I didn't clearly see Parker because Miss Jordan was hovering over her, but they did seem fine at the time.
And Miss Ryder even seemed to be looking very calm, yes?
She was looking extremely calm at that time, yes.
And let's move on to the next day. Miss Ryder was still present at the campsite when you arrived, yes?
At what time exactly?
The next day on July 15th, pardon me, Miss Ryder was still at her campsite when you arrived with the police, yes?
Yes, she was. She said she was sleeping the whole time, but I did not see her truck when I went out for my hike earlier.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor. At this time, I just ask that my witness be allowed to step down.
Absolutely. Thank you for your testimony, ma'am. Y'all give me just a moment before we move on to the next witness. Is my co-judge ready to proceed? Next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the prosecution calls Kelly Dews to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Please state your name for the court.
Hey guys, my name's Kelly Dews.
Miss Dews, what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm kind of a famous MeTuber. It's a platform you can upload videos that you make personally, and as you gain views, you can also generate ad revenue. And so that's what I do.
What kind of channel do you have on MeToo?
My channel's quite an adventurous one. I've taken several videos, one where I even jump from the CN Tower. It's something I like to do is chase adrenaline, and I do that on my channel, and it makes great revenue.
What was your favorite experience?
My favorite experience would probably be spending a month in Antarctica. I'm from Canada originally, so it was kind of like home, just a lot colder.
Miss Dews, what kind of videos have you been doing recently?
Most recently was my video I made about my experience at Calkins Campground. It started off as a great experience, but it ended in a terrible tragedy.
Ms. Dews, I want to talk about your experiences at Calkins Campground. What day did you arrive at the campsite?
I arrived at Calkins Campground on the 14th, and I stayed until the 15th.
What did you see when you arrived?
Well, when I arrived, I went to pay for my cabin at Miss Armani's cabin, but she wasn't there, so I just grabbed the map off the front, and I went on the trails from there.
What trail did you go on?
Well, first I went on the Wagner Loop, but then I went back and I just started on the LaCrone Loop.
Let's talk about your experiences on the LaCrone Loop. Did you meet anybody on the trail?
Yes, on the trail I met the defendant, Miss Jordan Ryder, and her daughter, Parker.
Around what time did you meet the two?
Well, I ran into them around 3:20, 3:30 or so. They were having a pretty intense argument though.
Did you talk to them?
Yes, I enjoy talking to other hikers when I'm on the trails, especially when I'm on them alone, by myself, I'm sorry. But whenever I arrived, Miss Parker was poking at Miss Jordan pretty aggressively, or poking at branches to hit Miss Jordan pretty aggressively with the walking stick she was using. And so they were having an argument back and forth about that at the time.
Did Jordan do anything about Parker poking her with a branch?
Yes, she was telling her to quit it several times, very aggressively. Eventually she did, but it was because Jordan very roughly grabbed the hiking stick away from her and jabbed back at her, and Miss Parker had to jump out of the way to dodge it and nearly fell on the ground.
Ms. Dews, would you recognize this walking stick? I showed it to you today.
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, I'm approaching opposing counsel with what's been previously marked as Exhibit 17A. Permission to approach the witness?
Permission granted.
Ms. Dews, what did I just hand you?
You handed me a picture of a walking stick?
Is it a fair and accurate picture of the walking stick that you saw that day?
Yes, it looks like the exact one.
Has it been changed or altered in any way?
Not that I can tell.
Your Honor, at this time, we move to enter Exhibit 17A into evidence.
Any objection?
None, Your Honor.
All right, so entered.
Your Honor, may I have permission to approach and publish?
Sure.
Permission to publish to the jury as well.
Permission granted.
Now, Ms. Dews, after you saw Jordan poking at Parker with the walking stick, what did you do?
Well, at that point, they were just bickering back and forth, and Jordan was making complaints about not even being able to get onto the next trail because of Parker's attitude. So, being it very awkward for me, I decided to excuse myself from the situation, and I went further up the trail.
Ms. Dews, did you ever come in contact with Jordan or Parker again after this incident?
Yes, I did. I went up the trail for a little bit, but I decided I would explore the woods itself. And so I was in the woods for about an hour, and I came back out practically exactly where I left off from them, and they were still there arguing, only more intensely now.
How were they arguing more intensely?
Well, this time, Parker was sending insults to Miss Jordan, and Miss Jordan's anger was much more present on her face and in her attitude. And this time, I just got out of the situation much more quickly, and in looking back, I did see Miss Jordan reach to very aggressively grab. It looked as if it may have been Parker's left arm, but it may have also been a walking stick. Both were near her chest at the time, so I couldn't be quite sure.
Now, after you saw Jordan and Parker a second time, was there any other point that you were on the trail that you saw the two together?
I did not see them again on the trails. I only heard them from that point.
What did you hear?
Well, about 15 minutes up the trail, I was still hearing their screaming, but this time I heard a yelling fight and then a scream, a very loud, almost animalistic, but I knew for a fact it was Parker's voice. I had already heard it twice at this point. And then from there it was silent. I kind of backed up, I called for help to see if anyone needed anything, but the trail was too rough for me to rush back, and I didn't hear a response, so from there I just went up to the top of the trail.
Ms. Dews, were you ever able to go back to where you saw Jordan and Parker after you heard that scream?
Yes, on my way back, I found the spot again, and near the edge of the cliff I did find broken twigs and footsteps, but it was just too close to the edge for me to be comfortable to look over or look for anyone, so I called out, but no one was there, and so I just continued back to my own cabin.
Ms. Dews, around what time did you arrive back at Calkins Campground?
Back at Calkins Campground, I would say I think it was around 5 or 6 or so. But just the events that day are so difficult to deal with, I almost don't even want to remember.
Now, Ms. Dews, let's talk about the events that happened on July 15th, 2018. What were you doing that morning?
Well, that morning, I stayed up late that night before. I was writing notes from the previous day, going over pictures I had taken from both my channel and a book that I'm trying to write with the events I'm experiencing in my life. And so that morning I woke up around 10 because I heard police sirens outside the cabin. And that's whenever I walked outside, I was greeted by Detective Chesney.
What was Detective Chesney doing there?
He approached me with a picture of Parker and asked if I had any information. So I told him that I did recognize her.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay? Explain.
You may.
Her statement to Detective Chesney that she did have information regarding Parker Page is an out-of-court statement and therefore inadmissible.
Any response, counsel?
Your Honor, she did not make any specific statement pertaining that. Her specific statement was, she did recognize Parker Page, and we're not offering that for the truth of the matter asserted, just for the effect on the listener and the events that happened after.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness very clearly stated that after the detective asked her this question, she told him that she did recognize Parker, and this information is an out-of-court statement. We believe they are using it for the content of the statement as it is something that has been omitted in the record as far.
I'm going to overrule.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Ms. Dews, what did you tell Detective Chesney?
I believe my exact words were something along the lines of, yes, that was the girl with the limp. She was on the trail with Jordan. And I may have mentioned the screams, but immediately after, I led Detective Chesney up the trail to where the screams came from. And within just a couple hours, they found her body at the bottom of the cliff.
Ms. Dews, I know this may be hard, but were you there when they found Parker's body?
Thankfully, I wasn't, but I know I was a good help in finding it, and so that's both a blessing and a curse.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions until this witness for cross-examination.
Any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I construct the courtroom for demonstrative?
Absolutely.
Please escort, Your Honor.
You may.
Ms. Dews, I'd like to begin by talking about why exactly you're here today. Would that be all right with you?
Sure.
Now, you own a video sharing channel on the internet, is that correct?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel.
And MeTube is a popular video sharing website, correct?
Yes, it is.
And you create content for this website through Daredevil-esque stunts, is that correct?
Not all of my videos consist of that, but that is the most popular, yes, sir.
In a lot of these videos, you enjoy jumping from tall buildings, is that true?
Yes, I have two, sure.
And you have been arrested several times for doing this, is that correct?
Well, it was very simply disturbing the peace, but yes, I have been twice.
You were arrested for jumping off of the CN Tower, is that true?
That is
Objection, Your Honor, to relevance.
May I respond, Your Honor? Your Honor, the witness's tendency to break the law when her channel is a motivation is extremely relevant to this trial, as she is appearing in court today because she wants to garner attention for her channel, as I will go on to show. It brings into question what other motives the witness may have for testifying.
Response, Counselor?
Your Honor, I don't believe that this pertains to any of the events that happened on that day. And if she had any bias about the incident that happened on July 14th, 2018.
Sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, when you arrived at Calkins Campgrounds, the first thing you did was break the law, wasn't it?
Well, I sure wasn't going to wait around all day for the people to come, and I did still pay. I just paid later whenever they were actually available.
But when you arrived at Calkins Campgrounds, you broke in without paying for admission. Isn't that true?
I did not break in. The maps were just out front, so I grabbed one and went on my way.
Well, you went onto a private property that required you to pay to be there, didn't you?
I guess if you like to phrase it that way.
And you hadn't paid to be there.
Yes, I did.
But you hadn't paid at that time.
No, I was not able to.
And then you started hiking on a couple of trails on the Calkins Campgrounds, is that correct?
Yes.
You went on the Lacrone Loop after a while, is that true?
Yes, it was the second travel I went on.
And as you were hiking the Lacrone Loop, you said you began your hike around 3-ish, correct?
Yes, I began my hike on the Wagner Loop around 3-ish, and then 20 to 30 minutes later was when I went on the Chrome Loop.
And would you recognize a copy of this trail if I approached you with it today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I am approaching the witness with what has been marked as exhibit number 23.
It shall so reflect.
And does Your Honor already have a courtesy copy of this exhibit?
Is this the campground map? Yes, I do.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, referring to this exhibit, you went on the left side of the Lacrone Loop Trail, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, permission to construct the demonstrative, which is simply an expanded map of exhibit 23?
Yes.
Now, looking at this map right here, and if you could follow along on your personal copy, you went on this bottom area of the trail adjacent to the Muskie Pond, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you said you hiked to the overlook leading up to the spur of the Calkins Rock, correct?
Yes, that's right.
That would be around this area, correct?
Give or take, obviously, on the trail you don't have an exact map, but yes.
Of course. And that area is a little over, using this compass right here, is a little bit over 3 miles up the trail, is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. As to relevance, may I be heard?
You may.
We're here today testifying as to the possibility of Parker being pushed off a cliff and the events that happened that day. We are not interested specifically in what Kelly Dews and which specific trail she took before that. This is also that was happening before.
May I proffer evidence, Your Honor?
You may.
Your Honor, this line of questioning is going to show that Kelly Dews claimed that she hiked this 3-mile trail in 20 minutes. We are calling into question the accuracy of her testimony and whether or not she can be accurate about both the timeline and the area in which she saw Jordan and Parker arguing, allegedly. We are attacking her testimony directly, and that is always relevant.
Any response?
Your Honor, I still believe that this is not relevant to today's case. This is something completely different, and it's talking about which trail she took beforehand, not even the trail in question today, Lacrone Loop.
I believe Counselor is entitled to a thorough and sifting cross. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Now, just to clarify, this is the Lacrone Loop, isn't it?
Yes.
And this bottom area of the Lacrone Loop is what you were hiking at about 3 p.m. that day, correct?
Yes, I'm a very active and outwarded hiker.
And once again, you hiked over 3 miles to get to the point that you claim you saw Jordan and Parker. Is that true?
Yes.
And you claim to have hiked this distance in a mere 20 minutes?
Well, I did say 20 to 30, however, I didn't have a watch at the time, so I may have been slightly off.
You hiked roughly 8 different elevation spikes, according to this map, in 20 to 30 minutes.
Yes.
You hiked over 3 miles and over 800 feet of elevation in 20 to 30 minutes?
That was my best estimate of time, but for the trial, yes.
Exactly, that was your best estimate. And then once you approached Jordan and Parker, you heard them arguing.
Yes, I did.
But you didn't know what they were arguing about.
I saw them aggressively arguing.
But once again, you didn't hear the entire conversation, did you?
I didn't hear the entire conversation, however, I did hear the part that I was present for.
You only heard bits and pieces of this argument.
I heard everything I was present to hear.
And it made you uncomfortable, so you rushed right past them, didn't you?
I wouldn't say right past them, we did start having a conversation. But yes, I did excuse myself once I got uncomfortable with the situation.
Exactly, you had a brief conversation and then you continued on your hike, is that true?
Yeah.
And then you wandered around for about an hour?
Yes, sir.
And you showed back up in the exact same place, right around here, is that correct?
Relatively the same place, yes.
And they were arguing again, weren't they?
Still very much so, even more intensely this time.
But you stopped in an even briefer encounter with them, didn't you?
Yes, it was only the more uncomfortable for me. And Jordan was only getting more aggressive with Parker, so I didn't feel it was my place to be there.
But you didn't even stop to speak with them, did you?
Yes, I did actually.
You only had a brief conversation.
Yes, I had a brief conversation with them.
You rushed right past them and you muttered something about needing to go, and that was it.
I wished them luck on the trail and went on my way.
And you rushed right past them up to the Calkins Rock overlook, is that true?
Yes, I did.
Once again, you didn't hear the entirety of this conversation, did you?
No, I only saw him very aggressively grab at her and yell at her.
You only had a snippet of the conversation and you rushed right past it.
Objection, Your Honor, to ask and answer.
Sustained.
Yes, sir. And you headed up to the Calkins campgrounds, Calkins Rock overlook, correct?
Yes, that was my destination. I wanted to get pictures of the final location for my channel that I would later post.
And you said that hike took you around 15 minutes or so?
Yes, it did.
And that's a little bit of half a mile, correct?
Yeah, I feel that's pretty reasonable.
And from half a mile away, you claim to have heard Jordan and Parker again, correct?
On my way up, I heard them again. It wasn't at the summit.
But it was still 15 minutes of a hike away.
Yeah, they were being pretty loud.
And you claim that you are certain you heard Parker yelling, correct?
Yes, at this point, I had already heard her voice twice, so I was 100% it was her.
Well, you had only heard her voice twice, correct?
I only need to hear yours twice to recognize yours.
But you didn't know Jordan and Parker before you began the hike, did you?
No, I met them there.
You'd never had a conversation longer than the brief 2 conversations you had with them hiking the trail, had you?
No, but they were enough for me to recognize her voice.
And yet still, 15 minutes away from them, you claimed you knew perfectly that it was Parker Page who screamed.
Once again, I'd like to clarify, I did not hear them at the summit. I heard them as I was walking mere feet away.
But it was still 15 minutes away.
I wound up 15 minutes away.
And then you returned to the area where you thought you heard the scream, correct?
Yes, it was a very recognizable area of the trail.
You didn't see Parker's body there, did you?
No.
You didn't find any blood on the ground, did you?
No, I saw broken twigs and footsteps near the ledge. I wasn't comfortable getting that close to the edge.
But once again, this was on a very weathered trail, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And you saw footsteps and broken twigs on this very weathered trail.
Yes, however, they were so close to the edge that clearly something wrong had happened.
And you didn't look over the edge, did you?
I wasn't going to risk myself for something that could possibly be false.
You didn't attempt to check the place where you thought Parker's body might be.
As I just stated, it would have been too dangerous for me.
Once again, you just brushed past it, didn't you?
No, I did my best to live without endangering myself.
And later, you said you brought the police back to that area, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you mentioned that you didn't look over the edge because you didn't think that you could do it safely.
That's right.
You expected Parker's body to be at the very bottom of that edge, didn't you?
I did not expect it to be there. I only knew that something close to the edge had happened, and now knowing that she was missing, it may have been her.
However, when you took the police to the area that you said you heard the argument, it took them hours to find Parker Page's body, didn't it?
It took them 2 hours to ultimately find her. However, the terrain to get to the bottom of the cliff is so dangerous, it would have taken anyone that long simply to get down, much less to find a body.
But that's not what I asked. I asked that it took them hours to find
Yes,
Parker
it took
Page.
them 2 hours.
That's certainly not the amount of time it would take to just look over the ledge, is it?
Well, just like I didn't feel safe looking over the edge, neither did they.
They had to search for hours around the place that you brought them to
Objection,
find
Your
Parker
Honor.
Page's body.
Ask and answer.
Ask again.
Keep it brief, Counselor.
Yes, Your Honor. Once again, it took them hours. At the place that you supposedly knew Parker had screamed to find her body.
Yes, I led them to the place of the screams, and it took them 2 hours to ultimately find her body at the bottom of a cliff, which had very tough terrain.
Now, I'd like to talk about something you said on direct examination. You said that your trip to the Calkins campgrounds started off as a great experience. Is that true?
Yes, the first trail, Wagner Loop, was very beautiful. The lake was amazing. I was able to take wonderful pictures. I had been exploring Midlands for a while, and Calkins was just one of the campgrounds I was planning to stop at.
In fact, but you were sent to this campgrounds to investigate the rumors of it being haunted, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, as to relevance.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
Your Honor, this witness claimed that she was sent to this campground to investigate the death of somebody who had died in 2008. We are using this evidence to show how the witness frequently exploits tragedies around campgrounds in order to garner views for her MeToo channel.
Your Honor, I still believe that this is not relevant. This is something completely different, a completely different case. And this is really just speculating as to what her mindset was that night if they were to go in to that line of questioning.
May I respond?
Sustained, Counselor.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, you claim that you made it back from your original hike around 5 or 6 or so, correct?
Yeah, I believe that was right.
You said you were frazzled because the day had been so stressful.
Yes, it had. It was a very tiring day. I just jotted down a few notes and tried to clear my mind for a while.
But you actually arrived back at your campground around 6:30, correct?
Yes, as I said, it was about the time that I remembered.
But you said 5 or 6 on direct examination.
Yes, I mean, 30 minutes off, give or take, when I didn't have a watch. It's pretty understandable, right?
You were so frazzled by the events of Calkins campgrounds that it impacted your memory.
It did not impact my memory. I simply was off because I didn't have a watch.
No further questions, Your Honor.
May we redirect, Counselor?
No, Your Honor. I just ask that the witness be allowed to step down.
Absolutely. Thank you for your testimony, ma'am.
Your Honor, would opposing counsel care for us to deconstruct the monitor at this time?
Counsel, you have any questions?
Yeah, you can.
Is my conjecture ready to proceed? Next witness?
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution calls Dr. Quincy to the stand.
All right.
May I proceed? Can you please introduce yourself for the jury?
Hello, I'm Dr. Quincy, the Chief Medical Examiner for State of Midlands.
What does a chief medical examiner do?
The Chief Medical Examiner goes about examining dead bodies, mostly in cases of homicide and murders.
How long have you been doing this?
Well, ever since I graduated college, I've been under the field of medical examination, whether it's nutrition or strictly medical examination. Solely, I've been a chief medical examiner for past 4 years.
What college did you graduate from?
I graduated from the University of Virginia School of Medicine in 1994. Before that, I had my bachelor's in biomedical science from the Ohio State University.
Is this the first time you've ever testified in a trial?
No, I've testified a lot. In fact, all my career I've been testifying, and I've also received and excellence in medical examination from the state of Midlands.
What do you typically testify about?
Well, since I'm a medical examiner for state, I normally testify for prosecution.
What do you do to prepare for your testimony?
I normally conduct autopsies and do peer-reviewed articles, and sometimes even compare given materials to find out exact causes of death.
Did you do an autopsy for this case?
Yes, I definitely did an autopsy on Parker Page.
Are autopsies regular in your field?
Yes, it is.
Are they reliable?
Definitely, when investigating the time and cause of death, it's the most reliable method.
Were you given any other materials to review for this case?
Yes, I was given Parker's medical records and some items found from Jordan Ryder's campsite so that I could compare whether any of those were consistent with the bruises on Parker Page's body, especially the one on the left clavicle.
Did all this help you come to any conclusions?
Yes, it definitely helped me come to the cause and time of Parker Page's death.
I'm going to ask you some questions that require you to answer to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. If I ever deviate from that, please let me know.
Sure.
Now, you said you had a copy of Parker Page's medical history. Did you learn anything from that?
Yes, I learned that Parker Page had a medical condition called osteogenesis imperfecta, which is commonly known as the brittle bone disease. So this disease actually causes a person to have a defective bone formation, which causes the bones to break easily. So Parker Page was a lot weaker than most of the child of her age.
To your knowledge, did this have any effect on what happened on June 14th?
Yes, it could certainly have, since Parker Page was a lot weaker than other children of her age. The hike for her would have been more difficult. However, there were more severe symptoms found in Parker other than just the bone deformation.
Like what?
She had stunt growth because she was just 56 inches tall and weighed 80 pounds, which is way lower than normal children of her age. And she even had a record of asthma in 2011 and had also suffered from bronchitis and pneumonia earlier, which is excessive breathing conditions.
Now, you said you came to a few conclusions. I'd like to talk to you about them. What did you conclude about the time of Parker Page's death?
From an autopsy and comparing the rigor mortis and liver mortis in Parker Page's body, I concluded that Parker Page's death was 26 hours prior to my autopsy, which leaves the time from between 4 to 6 p.m. on the day of July 14th.
Let's break that down. What's liver mortis?
So, liver mortis is basically the discoloration of your lower body part after the death. So, you know how when you make a pottery, the fresh color of the clay starts to fade away and you get more solid brown color. That's something like liver mortis, the discoloration.
And rigor mortis?
I would like to use an example of a Play-Doh while explaining rigor mortis. So if you put a Play-Doh out, it starts to get stiffened as the time increases as you put out. So that's basically rigor mortis, the stiffening of joints and muscles in the body after the death.
How in the world do these things help you come to a time of death?
Well, we have a formula actually to calculate the time of death, which is subtracting the body's temperature when given with the normal human body temperature and dividing it by 1.5. Because 1.5 is the degree of temperature that a human body loses each hour after death. So after I calculated Parker's given temperature with the normal human body temperature, I found it to be around 26 hours prior to the death, and the rigor mortis and rigor mortis conditions of Parker Page's body were inconsistent with the conditions 24 hours after the death.
So what time did you come up with?
Between 4 and 6 p.m. on July 14th, 2018.
Let's talk about Parker Page's cause of death. What was that?
It was a blunt force trauma on the head.
What's blunt force trauma?
If you're hit or struck by an object, by a blunt force object, then it is a blunt force trauma. It's basically an impact when you're hit or struck.
And where exactly did Parker Page suffer this blunt force trauma?
On her head, the frontal portion.
Were there any other significant injuries?
Yes. Parker Page had many bruises in her body and had some healed as well as unhealed fractures, some of which have been in her medical records, others have not. She also had an ecmysis on her left clavicle.
What's ecmysis?
So ecmysis is an impression that's left in a human body. I would again like to use an example of a Play-Doh. So as you go on molding Play-Dohs and making shapes, you can find your fingerprints and the marks on the Play-Doh. So that's basically ecmysis.
Do you know where this came from?
Well, the ecmysis has a diameter of 2.25 centimeter and it lengths to 1.125 centimeter at its highest point, which is inconsistent with the hiking staff that Jordan Ryder had in her camp.
Would you be able to recognize this hiking staff I showed it to you?
Yes.
You have permission to approach the jury and retrieve evidence exhibit 17.
Permission granted.
That's all right. The permission to approach the witness.
Permission granted.
Dr. Quincy, can you show the jury exactly what this hiking staff looks like?
Sure. This is the hiking staff that was given by Detective Chesney to me for medical examination. And the lower portion of the hiking staff right here is inconsistent with the Parker's ecmysis on the left clavicle. So it is more likely than not that Parker Page was hit by the hiking staff and fell from a distance of 40 feet in the hike.
Permission to approach retrieve.
Permission granted.
To republish to the jury.
Permission granted.
Dr. Quincy, do you know where they found that hiking staff?
It was found in Jordan Ryder's tent.
Was this an accident?
Well, all the evidences in this case does not suggest that it was an accident, but rather suggests that Parker Page was hit by the hiking staff while on the hike and fell from a height of 40 feet down.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions. I now turn to the witness for cross-examination.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Afternoon, Dr. Quincy. I've just got a few questions for you.
Sure.
So I want to talk about three distinct sections of your report, starting with your report talking about Parker's medical history and her brittle bone disease. So Parker was diagnosed with type 1 osteogenesis imperfecta.
Yes, Parker was diagnosed with type 1 osteogenesis imperfecta in 2013, and that has been stated in her medical records.
And that's the mildest form of brittle bone disease.
Yes, definitely.
Now, Parker received that diagnosis in 2013.
Yes.
And Parker unfortunately passed away in 2018.
Yes, that's correct.
So you'd agree with me that there's a 5-year gap between Parker's diagnosis of type 1 and her death in 2018.
Yes.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about some potential impacts that someone with brittle bone disease might suffer. You'd agree with me that someone with brittle bone disease is likely to suffer respiratory issues.
Well, the symptoms of brittle bone disease varies from the type of brittle bone disease the person has. In Parker's case, Parker was just diagnosed with type 1, and anything other than that has not been updated in her medical records.
Right, but just going back to my question, generally speaking, people with brittle bone disease suffer from respiratory issues more so than someone without brittle bone disease.
Yes, but it also depends on the type of brittle bone disease they have.
Well, some of the respiratory issues that a brittle bone disease person might suffer from are bronchitis and asthma.
Yes, again, coming back to the type.
Parker was diagnosed with asthma in 2011,
Yes,
and she was treated for bronchitis in 2018.
yes, definitely.
And I want to talk about another potential respiratory issue. You actually noted that there was abnormal pulmonary collagen in Parker's lungs,
Yes,
and you determined this during your autopsy.
yes.
Dr. Quincy, you'd agree with me that Parker's doctors certainly wouldn't have had access to her lung tissue when they diagnosed her with type 1.
No.
Objection, Your Honor. This is speculation. That's the witness doesn't know what the doctor had access to. Lack of personal knowledge, rather.
Your Honor, it's within the witness's reaction-based perception to know that Parker's doctors certainly did not perform an autopsy and would not have had access to her lung tissue.
What was the question again?
Parker's doctors would not have had access to Parker's lung tissue when they diagnosed her in 2013.
Oh.
So, Dr. Quincy, you'd agree with me that Parker's doctors certainly wouldn't have had access to her lung tissues when they diagnosed her in 2013.
Well, in 2013, Parker was diagnosed with just brittle bone disease. There has been no other records of her lungs or breathing problem in 2013.
Right, so they were not aware of her abnormal pulmonary collagen in her lungs, were they?
Well, they've not been stated in her medical records. I don't really know if her doctor was aware or not.
So since it's not in her medical record, we can figure that it probably means they weren't aware.
You can say so.
All right, Dr. Quincy, I'm going to move on to the second section of your report, your calculation of time of death. So you look at a number of factors when you calculate time of death.
Yes.
You look at rigor mortis,
Yes, definitely.
and you look at body temperature.
Yes.
I want to break those down one by one. Let's start with rigor mortis. So rigor mortis, you look at the stiffening of the body's muscles following death.
Yes.
And there's a standard timeline you can use of that stiffening to determine time of death.
Yes, definitely. And that's what I used drawing my conclusion.
Dr. Quincy, you would agree with me that that timeline of rigor mortis can actually be impacted by environmental factors.
Yes, sometimes it can be.
All right, let's talk about body temperature. So with body temperature, you look at the cooling of the body over time.
Yes.
And you assume that cooling happens at 1.5 degrees per hour.
Yes, the dead body uses 1.5 degrees per hour after death.
Dr. Quincy, does 1.5 degrees per hour cooling factor in the possibility of external temperatures?
Yes, it can in some cases.
Dr. Quincy, is it your testimony today that using 1.5 degrees per hour factors in outside temperature?
Well, in my condition, I did not really take that as a factor because as suggested in the affidavits that I found, that electron loop was supposed to be more of a shady loop, like had a lot of shades in it, so the temperature in there might not have been that high as in other cases.
Dr. Quincy, like you just said, you actually did not factor in outside temperature in this calculation.
Yes, I did not think it was necessary.
All right, let's move on to the third and final section of your report I want to talk about, your determination of Parker's cause of death. You ruled Parker's death a homicide.
Yes, the evidences suggest that it was a homicide.
And the evidence you're referring to is a bruise and fracture of her left collarbone.
Yes, which is inconsistent. The ecdysis caused by the bruise is inconsistent with the hiking staff found in Jordan Ryderston.
Well, I want to talk about some potential causes for Parker's bone breakages. You'd agree with me that Parker's bones were far more likely to break than another person's.
Yes, definitely. She had brittle bone disease.
Right, so due to her brittle bone disease, she was much more likely to break a bone.
Yes.
In fact, she was much more likely to break her left collarbone, for example.
Well, if anybody would have fallen from that height, then it was much likely for even them to break their collarbone.
But generally speaking, she was more likely to break her left collarbone than another person.
Well, given any bone of her body, yes.
And Parker having brittle bone disease was also much more likely to bruise.
Yes.
She was more likely to bruise even as a result of a minor physical impact. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Dr. Quincy, finally, you'd agree with me that it's possible Parker's left collarbone was broken in a separate, unrelated incident. Yes or no?
Yes, it could have been true, but we cannot really ignore the ecdysis, which is inconsistent with the hiking staff found in the exact same location as the broken collarbone.
So that's a yes. It is possible her left collarbone was broken in a separate incident.
Yes, it is possible, but not likely.
No further question, Colonel.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor. Just ask that the witness be allowed to step down.
Absolutely. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Also, we'd like to retrieve evidence from the witness stand.
Sure.
Pretty sure there's a pile of it.
Does the state have any more witnesses they wish to call this time?
At the time, Your Honor, the state rests its case in chief. We ask for a brief 5 to 10 minute recess if time allows.
We're doing good on time, right? Okay, let's do 5 minutes, and then we can always do a longer break after this case. So we don't have to wait on we don't have to wait on was like, oh,
Ow, how much time has passed? Is this case going like quick like the others?
it's 3:46.
When did we start?
Because all else is 5:33, so like 2:30.
Okay.
So it took a little over an hour. At least there was objections this time. Like I got to rule and not a single objection from both sides. I've never seen that before. I'm sitting there and I'm like,
Was it a good round otherwise though?
like the attorneys, like everyone was incredibly confident. So I scored them very well,
Yeah.
which reflecting back on it, I probably should have taken off points for no objections, but like, they were so confident
Yeah.
that I guess I kind of like overruled that.
Yeah.
It was a very sterile round. Like everyone knew their stuff. Like you can tell they were very well rehearsed and like had been like practicing, but there was no like flair
Yeah.
because there's an objection battle. So then I ended up like really focusing on the witnesses, and a lot of like pretty much across the board, all the witnesses were just like. That was quick. Where's Tapper?
5A. You okay? You need anything? Coffee? Seriously?
I'll get my own, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'll wait.
And the dog's just lost. Yeah. They have the game on up there.
Where's the Braves now? It's really like, it is not.
It is Georgia's choke week. That's what's just happened. Braves, Falcons, and Dogs.
Oh gosh.
Damn, that's tragic.
I will say, as someone who works right next to it, like works at the Battery and whose office looks into the stadium, I hate the Braves lost. I hate the way they lost, I'm glad postseason's over because if one more fireworks show went off outside my window during the middle of the day, I was going to pitch a fit. I can't do it. I can't take it. And then for like game one, we had tickets to game one, so like my parents were already there, like my whole family. And then once I got off work, I just like changed really quick and walked over. But you know, before the game, they're doing all the pomp and circumstance and stuff, and they do the flyover, or as I like to call it, the flyby. The next thing I look out my window, and there's like a jet engine like flying right at me. And I was like, oh, cool, great, all right, like that's fine. I'm under attack now. It's cool. Just trying to draft a will for somebody, and we're all gonna die.
Yeah, what do you do, Ashley?
I'm an estate and probate, or estate planning and probate attorney
Oh,
with Brian Douglas and Associates.
Okay.
So,
It sounds fancy.
yeah, it's fun. It's exciting. I was doing debt collection, so it's a lot more life fulfilling
Yeah.
to actually help people instead of take money from people. So that's good.
What are y'all doing so far?
I think so far.
Well, it's like I was telling her, at least there's objections this round. My last round, not a single objection.
Oh, a single person, really?
The entire competition. I was like, this has never happened to me before. Like, I'm a presiding judge of the board. This never happens. So
That's weird.
it was very strange. And it was a good team. It was Emory and Furman. Like those are good teams.
Yes. At all?
Not at all. Yes. No. Yes. It was all I could think about when they held their hands was not to be like, seriously, guys, like you didn't.
You didn't think?
And there's stuff there. it's there. I saw it. A couple times I would look at it and be like, no, that's not it. Okay. It was strange. Are we missing anybody? Do you need to wait on anybody? Ready to have a vote?
The defense is ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Is my co-judge ready? Does the defense like to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Dr. Elias Lopez to the stand. Good afternoon. May you please state your name for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Elias Lopez.
Mr. Lopez, what do you do for a living?
I'm a forensic pathologist. For the last 5 years or so, I've been running my own independent consulting firm. We typically get contracted out by prosecutors or defense attorneys to conduct independent reviews in death investigations.
Dr. Lopez, what education do you have in this field?
Well, I went and got my degree in biomed and health sciences over at Purdue, and then I went on to med school at Emory here in Atlanta.
And what experience do you have in this field?
Well, I am a forensic pathologist by training, so of course my education. After school, I worked at a hospital for about 10 years before I became the chief medical examiner in the state, which is a position I held for 21 years. Since then, I've testified at about 50 trials and conducted, I don't know, about 3,000 autopsies by now.
And how are you involved in today's case?
Well, I was hired by the defense team to conduct an independent review of Dr. Quincy's analysis of this case, as well as undergo my own independent analysis.
What did this independent review entail?
Well, I did what's called a meta-analysis, the standard method for someone in my position. I compared Dr. Quincy's analysis in his autopsy with the best practices and standard methods in the field.
What methods did you use?
Well, like I said, I conducted a meta-analysis, so I compared what Dr. Quincy did with what anyone else in her position should have done.
And what materials did you use?
Well, I had access to all of Parker Page's medical records, obviously Dr. Quincy's autopsy report itself, a lot of the physical evidence and photographs collected by the police in their investigation of this case, as well as the interrogation performed on Jordan Wright.
And you stated that you started by looking at Dr. Quincy's investigation. How does Dr. Quincy's report go with the best practices in your field?
Well, first I have to say that Dr. Quincy has had an excellent career. I actually hired her when I was the chief medical examiner, and she made for an exceptional assistant. But that's part of the reason I was so disappointed in her analysis of this case. In my opinion, she made 3 fairly egregious errors in her analysis.
You mentioned 3 errors, so let's take those one by one. What's the first error you identified?
Well, I can't overemphasize the importance of starting off a case by looking at any then existing medical conditions. Dr. Quincy was right to note that Parker Page had been diagnosed with type 1 osteogenesis imperfecta. But where I take issue with her analysis is that she failed to rule out that misdiagnosis was possible. I believe she overlooked many signs that Parker likely had a more severe type of brittle bone disease.
What were these signs?
Most importantly, her poor respiratory health and her small stature. There were a few more minor ones as well.
So let's start with her small stature. How is her small stature related to a misdiagnosis of the type of OI she had?
Objection, Your Honor. That's an improper opinion. May I be heard?
You may.
Your Honor, we believe they've laid the proper foundation for this witness to testify as an expert in forensic pathology, not actual medical examinations of live patients, and to make these diagnoses.
Response, Counselor?
Your Honor, Dr. Lopez has a degree in medicine, a medical degree from Emory University. He has expert knowledge to testify in both areas, and Dr. Quincy, who has the same experience, did the same in analyzing OI and what the symptoms might be and how that affected it is on a dead person in autopsy.
If I may.
You may.
Your Honor, Dr. Quincy is a medical examiner. It's part of her job description to look at diagnosis. However, forensic pathologists mainly focus on criminal activity or situations in which a crime has occurred and how exactly that crime occurred.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please continue.
Could you repeat your question? We were talking about Parker's diagnosis. I'm not sure what you asked.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Why is her small stature relevant to diagnosing what type of OI she had?
Sure. Well, anyone with type 1 osteogenesis imperfecta is expected to have a fairly typical size. But with type 2 and type 3 osteogenesis imperfecta, sufferers typically start to become small and light around the age of 12, ranging up to 15. The fact that Parker was at the very beginning of that age range where we would expect the long-term effects of the disease to start to show, well, she was underweight and light and short for her age at that time. So that was fairly significant and pointed to that she likely had a more severe fat type of OI.
So in addition to small stature, you also mentioned that she had respiratory problems. Why is respiratory problems important in diagnosing how severe a form of OI she had?
Certainly. Like I said before, the severity of osteogenesis imperfecta relates very much to the severity of the symptoms. Now, everyone is expected to have some sort of respiratory issues if they're a sufferer of brittle bone disease. However, the fact that Parker Page had progressively worsening symptoms, for example, she was diagnosed with bronchitis and pneumonia in just the 6 months prior to her fall, shows that her lung health was deteriorating. And additionally, Dr. Quincy noted abnormal pulmonary collagen in her autopsy.
Abnormal pulmonary collagen. Why is that important?
Well, it's expected that anyone with brittle bone disease would have less collagen, which is the protein that makes up lung tissue. Now, that's not uncommon at all. But the fact that hers was of abnormal structure in addition to overall less volume of collagen means she absolutely did not have type 1, because that is much more severe symptom.
Why is this misdiagnosis important in today's case?
The severity of Parker's respiratory health would have directly corresponded to how she responded to the extreme heat and exercise that she was under on July 15th out on the trails. The most common cause of death for a sufferer of brittle bone disease is accidental trauma that occurs after exercise or something that causes respiratory issues. So it's far more likely that Parker slipped and fell because of the fact that her severe lung problems had been getting worse.
Now, you mentioned that there were 3 critical errors in Dr. Quincy's report. What was the second error?
The second error was Dr. Quincy's analysis of the time of death in this case. Dr. Quincy simply did not factor in the external temperature at the Calkins campground that weekend.
How does temperature affect, what role does temperature play in the process?
When you try to determine the time of death in a case like this, you look primarily at 2 components: the stiffening process and the cooling process that the body undergoes after death. Both of them are extremely sensitive to external temperature.
Let's break each of those down. How is the stiffening process relevant to this case?
The stiffening process, known as livor mortis, is pushed by an enzyme reaction that changes in speed depending on the temperature. Under 86 degrees, it's fairly normal, but if you pass that threshold, it doubles in speed. And we know that it was over 90 degrees outside that weekend the entire time that Parker's body was exposed to the elements, which would dramatically sped up that process.
So in addition to the stiffening process, there's also the cooling process. How does this affected by temperature?
Well, I mean, on its face, the cooling process is extremely affected by temperature. Dr. Quincy assumed a standard loss of heat at 1.5 degrees each hour, which only holds at room temperature. So the fact that it was over 90 degrees and that Dr. Quincy still used that standard assumption of 1.5 degrees of heat loss per hour is tantamount to the assumption that an ice cube would melt at the same rate in Antarctica and the Sahara Desert. It simply changes the math by a significant margin.
So what conclusions were you able to draw with the correct temperature equations factored in?
Well, I saw no reason that Dr. Quincy's observations were any issue, just her analysis. So assuming that her observations were accurate, I did my own analysis, and Parker would have died any time between 7 and 9 p.m. that night, not 4 and 6 as Dr. Quincy concluded.
Now, what was the final error you found in Dr. Quincy's report?
Yes, well, aside from the time of death and the misdiagnosis, Dr. Quincy's final designation of this case as a homicide due to the break of Parker's left collarbone is simply unwarranted.
Why is this unwarranted?
Well, Dr. Quincy noted the severity of the bruise and believed that it had to have been caused by unnatural external trauma. And if it had been someone like you or I, that might have been a proper conclusion. But the fact of Parker's osteogenesis imperfecta means she's more likely to bruise and more likely to have bone fractures. If you add on the fact that she likely had a more severe form than Dr. Quincy expected, a much less significant force could have caused the exact injury that Dr. Quincy noted on her left collarbone, simply leaning on her walking stick or brushing it on a rock during the fall, anything.
In total, what were you able to conclude from your investigations of Parker Page's death?
Well, aside from what I've mentioned, I fully endorse Dr. Quincy's final conclusion that Parker ultimately died due to blunt force trauma to the head when she fell from the cliff. However, I don't think that a designation of homicide is fitting for this case. I believe it's far more likely that Parker's respiratory issues, combined with the heat and strenuous exercise, means she would have been extremely unstable on her feet and far more likely to slip and fall on the Calkins trip that day.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any,
Yes, Your Honor.
Mercy. Now, you stated that Parker Page was suffering from possibly a more extreme version of brittle bones disease, correct?
Yes, I find that very likely.
Which means that her bones could be a little bit more fragile.
That's one example, yes.
She could suffer from some more breathing issues.
Yes, sir, that's another symptom.
To your knowledge, Jordan Ryder took her onto Lake Chrome Loop.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that question.
To your knowledge, Jordan Ryder took Parker Page onto Lake Chrome Loop.
Yes, I read the interrogation, and that is what she said.
All the while she was exhibiting these more severe symptoms of brittle bones disease.
I don't believe there are any specific mentions in the interrogation of respiratory issues, though it did say that Parker slowed down and began to struggle a bit.
You also said that this ecdysis on the clavicle could have been done from anything minor.
Yes.
But isn't it also possible that something major could have also caused this ecdysis?
Yes, I would have expected more breaks, but it is possible.
It's possible that being hit with a hiking stick could still cause the ecdysis.
Yes, I believe even leaning on it could have caused it, but certainly the hiking staff could have been the cause.
In fact, it's not only possible, but it's likely that this hiking staff caused this ecdysis.
No.
So is your testimony today that this ecdysis was not caused by the hiking staff?
It could have been. I don't believe it's the most likely cause.
Now, you also stated that something else was wrong with Dr. Clinton's autopsy report.
Two other things, yes.
You talked about the time of death.
Right, I would say perhaps her most egregious error.
And you say the time of death was off because of the formula she used.
Yes.
Because it was a hotter day.
A substantially hotter day.
And to your knowledge, Lake Chrome Loop is one of the more shaded trails.
That was mentioned in the interrogation, though it remained above 90 degrees the entire time at night, so I don't think that the shade was particularly relevant.
But isn't it true that the Lake Chrome Loop was a more shaded trail?
Surely during the day, but as Parker died around sunset and was found the next day, I don't believe that's particularly relevant.
And more shade can mean cooler temperatures in some areas.
That's certainly true.
So if Parker Page were to die under a more shaded area, it was likely that the cooler temperatures could have factored into the equation.
In theory, yes, but not in this case because her body was there at night.
Now, you didn't perform an autopsy on Parker Page.
No, I simply relied on the observations of Dr. Quincy.
So you didn't see any actual signs of livor mortis?
I didn't see them with my own eyes, though I noted them in Dr. Quincy's autopsy report.
You also didn't see any actual signs of rigor mortis with your own eyes?
With my own eyes, no.
With your own eyes, you're unaware of the extent of these two things, correct?
I'm aware of the extent, but not from my own eyes, no.
You also never actually had a chance to speak with Jordan Ryder.
That's true.
Now, you were hired by defense counsel.
Indeed.
You asked defense counsel to speak with Jordan Ryder.
Yes, it would have been ideal.
And they denied you.
That's true.
So you don't know exactly where Jordan Ryder was when Parker Page became injured with the ecdysis?
Yeah, I'm not certain.
You don't know exactly where Jordan Ryder was when Parker Page was found dead?
No, I don't.
You don't know exactly where Jordan Ryder was or what Jordan Ryder was doing whenever Parker Page fell off the edge of this cliff?
No, I was focused on Parker Page's body and the analysis I could conclude based on her medical observations, not what Jordan Ryder did.
And isn't it true that Dr. Quincy ruled this cause of death as blunt force trauma to the head?
And I agree with that. Parker certainly died when she hit the bottom of the ravine.
And isn't it true that it's possible that Parker Page fell off this cliff?
I believe extremely likely that she did.
Isn't it also likely that Parker Page not only could have fell off this cliff, but she could have been pushed off this cliff?
I do not believe that that's likely, no.
So it's unlikely.
Yes.
You don't have no further questions.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. I ask that my witness be allowed to step down.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yes.
Defense will give me a brief moment. Is my co-judge ready to
be all right for me to set the court for demonstrative aid?
Absolutely.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Cameron Lee to the stand. May I please call, Your Honor?
May.
Please introduce yourself to the court.
Hi, my name's Cameron, and I consider myself a wilderness explorer.
How did you come to be involved in this case, Miss Lee?
Well, I work at the Calkins campground. It's convenient because I live there.
You live there?
Well, not technically, but I might as well. Every free weekend that I have, I'm spent up there.
Now, were you on the Calkins campgrounds the afternoon of July 14th, Miss Lee?
I was.
And did you ever see Jordan Reiner and Parker Page on the Calkins campgrounds?
Yes, I arrived at Calkins campgrounds on July 13th. As soon as I was done setting up my hammock, my Bluetooth speaker, my solar heated shower, and my bear trap, I went straight to sleep.
Could you tell us about where and when exactly you first saw Jordan and Parker Page?
It was around 12 o'clock that day. I remember because they were driving a really loud red Chevy.
And did you see them again after that on the campgrounds?
I did. Around 2:30ish, I saw them at the picnic area.
And would it help you when referring to times and places like this to refer to a map of Calkins campgrounds?
Sure. I mean, I have the place memorized, but it might be helpful to you.
I appreciate that consideration, Miss Lee. Your Honor, at this time, let the record reflect that I am approaching the witness with what has been marked as exhibit number 23. Do you recognize this exhibit, Miss Lee?
Yeah, this is a map of Calkins campgrounds.
And would it help you to refer to an enlarged image of this map when discussing these times and places?
Yeah, sure.
Your Honor, at this time I'd ask that the witness be allowed to step down and make use of the demonstrative aid, enlarged exhibit 23.
So granted.
Now, Ms. Lee, could you please point out on this map exactly where you saw Jordan and Parker on the LaCrone Loop Trail?
Yeah, I saw them around 2:30 right here at the picnic area. It's right here, but Armani did this really cool thing when she made the map and she blew it up over here. So you can see the little campsites and picnic areas, but it's over here. But you can see it better right here.
Could you remind me what time it was that you saw them?
Around 2:30.
And how did they seem? What was the general attitude like of the two?
Well, they seemed pretty happy to me. Parker
Objection,
looked...
Your Honor. Speculation.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, I merely asked the witness how the two of them seemed. I was simply asking for her rationally based perception based on her observations of the pair on July 14th. I had in no way an intention to ask her to delve into their mindset, but basically to draw upon her observations as is permitted by the Rule 602.
And your response?
Your Honor, the witness just stated that they were happy, and this requires her going into their mindsets to knowing that they are happy, and we've had no evidence to verify how she would even know this.
Overruled.
Well, we asked the question, Ms. Lee. How did they seem when you saw them on the trail on July 14th?
And they looked happy to me. I mean, Parker had a really big smile on her face.
And how quickly were they moving?
They were walking pretty slow. I remember thinking that they probably wouldn't even make it back by dawn at the pace that they were going. I think that Parker girl even had a little bit of a limp.
And when did they leave to begin the LaCrone Loop Trail, Ms. Lee?
They left at 3 o'clock, and they started heading up this way.
And do you know where the LaCrone Loop Ravine is, Ms. Lee?
Yeah, it's right here.
And could you tell me approximately how far away from that area that you saw them hiking the LaCrone Loop Ravine is?
I'd say it's about 2.5 miles.
Ms. Lee, would you consider yourself an avid hiker?
Well, sure. I hike every time I got the chance. I love to walk.
Have you ever hiked the LaCrone Loop Trail?
I have. Not all of it, though.
Now, could you remind me when Jordan and Parker left to begin this trail?
At 3 o'clock.
Could you remind me when exactly you saw them return from this trail?
I saw them come back around 4:30.
Ms. Lee, could you, an experienced hiker, ever hike from the picnic area to the LaCrone Loop Ravine and back in just an hour and a half?
Gosh, no, it took a lot longer than that.
And based solely on what you observed of Jordan Parker on that afternoon, do you think that they could have possibly hiked from the picnic area to the ravine and back in an hour and a half?
I don't think so, especially not at the pace that they were going.
Thank you, Miss Lee. You can return to your seat at this time. Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions for the witness. Would opposing counsel care for me to deconstruct the demonstrative?
You can leave it up.
I have nothing further for this witness.
May I proceed?
You may.
Miss Lee, you were on the campgrounds on July 14th, 2018, correct?
That's right. It's one of my most favorite places to be.
That's where you met Jordan and Parker.
Yeah, I talked to him for a second.
Now, you said on direct examination that you noticed Parker was favoring her left leg.
Yeah, she had a little bit of a limp, but she was keeping up just fine.
She did have a hiking stick in her hand.
That's right.
Now, this was the last time that you actually interacted with the two.
Yeah, that's the last time that I spoke to him, but I saw him again later.
Well, I want to talk about that.
All right.
So, that was the last time you spoke with them. You didn't go with them on the trail, correct?
Oh, no, I was around the lake.
So, you weren't on the LaCrone Loop that day.
No, I didn't hike the LaCrone Loop that day.
You have no idea what happened between Parker and Jordan, do you?
I mean, from what I saw, no. I mean, I wasn't with them the whole day. I was busy at the Calkins campground enjoying myself.
Right, you were at the Calkins campground enjoying yourself at the lake.
That's right.
And as we can see here on this map, you were at the Muskie Pond.
That's right.
You were putting your feet in the water and enjoying your time.
It's right. It's like my own version of a spa.
Now around 4:30, you said that you saw the two coming back, correct?
That's right.
But you really only saw Jordan Ryder.
No, I saw both of them. I only saw Jordan's face, though.
Well, you would agree with me that this place was very wooded, correct?
It was definitely wooded. Yeah, there's some woods around there. That's why you gotta watch out for bears. That's why I have a bear trap.
So you're 100% sure that you saw Jordan Ryder, correct?
Well, yeah, I saw both of them.
Well, you only heard a voice following Jordan, correct?
Well, I turned around because I heard somebody behind me. I saw Jordan's face, and then I heard someone behind him, so then I looked to see who it was, and it looked like Parker from behind.
But you couldn't see specifically because the trees were in the way.
I didn't see her face, no, but it looked like Parker to me.
So you can't be 100% sure that you saw Parker leaving with Jordan.
I'm pretty sure that I did. I mean, she's pretty short. I didn't see anybody else on the trails that day. I just didn't see her face.
Right, Miss Lee. You're pretty sure you saw Parker.
Almost positive, yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
None, Your Honor. At this time, I would ask that we deconstruct Exhibit 23 and be allowed to call our next witness, and that this witness be allowed to step down.
Yes. Thank you for your testimony.
Your Honor, at this time, if I may inquire how much time is remaining for direct examination?
The defense has 10 minutes and 38 seconds remaining.
Your Honor, may we proceed?
You may.
At this time, the defense calls Jordan Ryder to the stand. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is Jordan Parker Ryder.
Ms. Ryder, do you know why you're here today?
Yes, they're accusing me of killing my daughter.
I know this is hard, but I have to ask, did you kill your daughter?
No, I would never do anything that could hurt Parker, let alone kill her.
Okay, Ms. Ryder, I want to talk more about Parker. Who exactly was Parker to you?
Parker was my everything. She was the love of my life, my only daughter. I loved her.
I miss her.
When was Parker born?